We start tonight with the outright cancellation of the 2020 South by Southwest Festival and all related activities as concerns about the spread of coronavirus claims its biggest event by far to date. And with it, hundreds of fans are left disappointed now that they won't be able to attend what has become the marquee event for the Sonic franchise. Thousands more wonder how Sega will plan around it. Joining us to now talk about this cancellation of South by Southwest 2020 is Noah Copeland. He joins us on the final. He actually lives in Austin, Texas, and has covered this for us on the scene for the past couple years. Honestly, Noah, forget Sonic for a moment, because South by, I think an argument can be made, really put Austin, Texas on the map, and this is their first cancellation in the more than 30-year history of this event. Like, again, forget Sonic for a moment. There are going to be livelihoods impacted by this. Talk, if you can, first about the economic impact that having the entire festival canceled is going to have on this city.
Huge. We're talking millions of dollars. You know, this is a place where people from all over come to Austin more than any other time of the year. I think one of the first years I went there, President Obama was actually there. If that gives you any idea, because there's so many different aspects of it. It's not just gaming. There's the gaming, the music festival, the film festival, people developing software. Like, it just takes over the entire town. I once heard somebody say, an Austin native once say, the thing I hate about South by Southwest is because it's always in the best week in spring and you just can't do anything because everyone is here. So I really think, that's a huge, I think that's why it took kind of so long for them to sort of make a decision, because they're like, hey, we really have to hold off as long as we can, because it's going to, like you said, livelihoods, I think, definitely impacted. I think so many people count on a huge influx of just commerce from just all over the world at this time. So, it's got to be a giant hole.
And it's a giant hole for a lot, not just the city, but a lot of industries. Obviously, we've been focused the past few years on the Sonic panel, but the gaming convention has really kind of come into its own the past few years. You were on the floor last year, and it looked very lively. There are a lot of indie developers that make the trip to South by to showcase their work. They've already taken a hit from the cancellation of the Game Developers Conference last week, 2 weeks ago. This just feels so feverish at this point, just this pace, because of what's been going on. Can indie developers take another hit like this, losing another outlet to showcase their work?
I mean, it's tough to say. It depends on the game, I really think, on whether or not showcasing is effective. There are some games that I think just don't showcase well in a loud, hectic, fast-paced environment like a show floor sometimes. So I think it, for one thing, kind of depends on your game. I've seen, it's also hard to say because, I've seen indie developers give presentations that going to those kind of showcases don't necessarily always impact sales. It's more that it sort of establishes you in a very professional context. So, I don't know. I think we still had PAX. What are they going to do? I think indie developers will still find ways to do things. You can't just cancel Planet Earth until this, virus subsides. So I think they'll do littler and local things. I think the main issue is that a lot of these events are from people from all over, but you'll still have, I think, a lot of local chances to show off things, because you can't just stay in your house. You got to get out somewhere.
It's really interesting that you bring up PAX, and in particular PAX East, because that event just concluded, and that concluded basically without a hit, without any.
No one died.
Well, I mean, Admittedly, we might be speaking a little too soon because the incubation period for COVID-19 is 2 weeks. So,
Right.
but so far, so good. There were obviously some high-profile cancellations at PAX East, but they went ahead with it, and most people still attended. What do you think is the difference here? Is it the caliber of exhibitors and attendees to this event versus PAX that you think prompted it?
Yeah, well, because PAX. So I don't know too much about PAX. I've never been, but PAX is. So imagine 4 PAXs happening on top of each other. You know what I mean?
Yes.
PAX is video games. Now imagine there's also a music PAX. There's also film PAX, and that's all happening at one time in a one particular section of the city.
And an education PAX and a bunch of other offshoots as well.
Yeah. There's just a lot, and I think that has a lot to do with it. I think the fact that you just, especially like the music festival, when it's just people walking around outside, you don't necessarily have sinks there. You got like food trucks, and there's a lot of outdoor things like that. And I feel like I don't know, I could be wrong, but I feel like it's harder to stay sanitary when there's not a roof over your head and you're just kind of like, relying on the Germex you got in your pocket. In outhouses, or porta potties, so I think that has a certain degree to do with it. I also think PAX was just early enough to get by with it, and I think brave enough to do it. Because I think because you have to make your call early, and I think the time of which PAX would have had to have made that call was sort of before a lot of this stuff is happening. I think South by Southwest cancellation will have more of an impact on maybe other events than if it had not canceled. I think, I don't know, I really feel like if South by Southwest had gone on, that would encourage more events, and I think that it's canceled has discouraged future events from happening, if that makes any sense.
It does, and I agree with you. I wrote on Twitter earlier that I think South by Southwest is basically the house of cards that has just been toppled, and I'm not totally sure we're going to see any major event going forward. Maybe for a couple months, maybe for the rest of the year. But I don't want to talk about that just yet. Let's talk about the immediate impact in our community, which is the Sonic panel. It's looking like Sega knew about this the moment everybody else did, and you have to really feel bad for Aaron and Katie and the rest of the marketing crew that this is their marquee event. This, I would argue, is the company's marquee event. You can maybe make an argument for Sega Fest, but that is so localized, and they have not really they've made some significant amounts of it. They've mostly been localized to Japan. Japan, of course, is going through their own crisis right now with the coronavirus. It's very likely there's probably not going to be a Sega Fest either in Japan. What do you think is going through Aaron's head right now and the marketing team right now of Sega? How do you think they can salvage this, if they can at all?
What I think is probably going through their head is mixed emotions. There's probably a certain degree of darn, but also kind of like a whew. If there's any nervousness about it, you don't have to worry about that anymore. I do wonder, I think you mentioned this, I do think that they might be looking to do some sort of some other way to maybe do like a Nintendo Direct style thing they might consider, because I imagine that they had some sort of announcements or some sort of news thing that they were hoping to drop, and they still have to have some way to do it. So if they make it a big event, or they just might just do a trailer, just release the trailer. They might just keep it very simple, because I often wonder sometimes how much decision is, okay, we got to get stuff so that South by panel is cool, versus, okay, if we have no panel, we can actually hold off on that, and we don't have to worry about blowing that there. We can save it. We don't have to look for all kinds of nice little things we could sprinkle in, but rather they can just sort of take their time and maybe do these things when they feel they're appropriate instead of all at once. Maybe they can now spread it out because there's not all that pressure to deliver and make a good panel at one singular time. So yeah, I feel like it can go either way, but I definitely think that they're probably just kind of putting their heads together and goes, okay, what are we going to do with all this? We have this thing stacked up, so let's find some other way to distribute this. It'll be interesting to see what it is. And I wonder if we'll see things in the future. If they don't do any sort of centralized, like Nintendo Direct type of thing, if it just becomes, tweets from here on out and press releases, if we'll see anything and go, that would have been their South by announcement right there.
And just to be clear, we are taping this in advance. We're taping this on Friday night. It is still not quite yet the close of business on the West Coast. So anything can happen, and it certainly has in the past couple of weeks. I think one concession, though, has to be made. If there is an alternative, whether it is a live stream, some other kind of event, it's just not going to have quite the impact that this panel has in recent years. And another thing I think to consider is, let's say there's a live stream. Okay, let's say somebody gets sick within the offices of Sega of America. They're going to close the office for 2 weeks. It is not a guarantee that the backup plan is going to pan out so much either, is it?
I guess that's true, because a lot of people are working from home. So, yeah, like I said, they may not do any sort of other thing. They may just release the press releases on just sort of a regular schedule and just make the best of what they can. They can't magically make things happen. I imagine that they're smart people. They got to work with what they got. So that's however the situation turns. If they're smart, they'll adapt. So, and I think they are. So
it's so unfortunate because the Sonic movie, they could have written the success of the Sonic movie so well into this. They really could have. This was an optimal opportunity for there to have been momentum with the franchise, and to have that taken away, at least for the moment, is like, if it weren't happening to our community, to Sega, to Aaron, etc., we probably would be laughing. It's
funny to me, like, if you remember last year, shortly before the panel started, I gave my predictions, which were incredibly accurate, by the way. I said that everyone kept saying, when are we going to hear about the movie? When are we going to hear about the movie? And I said, you will hear absolutely nothing about the movie whatsoever. You may hear a mention. And that turned out to be true. I'm like, they want to separate it. But now I 100% believe they were going to mention the movie at South by. They were like, that the risk's out of the way, we weren't going to talk. We were going to distance ourselves when we didn't know if it was going to be good. But now that it's good and actually positive, we are going to talk about it. So, yeah, thank you guys for coming to the movie. That was really awesome. Really fun to represent Sonic in that way. Thank you, fans. You're so cool. Yeah, and by the way, Sonic Forces perform strong or something like that. But, yeah.
But here's the thing. Sega will probably be fine. South by will probably be fine. South by is an enormous convention. It has the recognition, brand recognition in so many different industries. But now there's a lot of focus on E3. And the organizers at the ESA have stated to this point they're monitoring the situation daily. We still have 3 months until E3, but there's a lot of industry concern, especially after the cancellation of GDC, that E3 may not happen this year. And there's a lot of concern in the industry. If E3 doesn't happen, it may not be able to come back, at least with the grandeur that it had. So
right.
my first question to you is, does E3 get canceled? And if it does, have we seen our last E3, potentially?
Does E3 get canceled? I really can't say at this time. Right now, regarding the coronavirus, I feel like it's a little bit like Majora's Mask. If you remember Majora's Mask, the moon is crashing into the earth, and there's this very good scene in it. Oops, I just touched my face. You guys didn't see that. There's a very funny scene or kind of funny scene in a mayor's office where there's like sort of two camps. There's people on one side going, "Oh my gosh, the world's gonna end! I can't believe it's gonna end." And the other side, you got these carpenters who are sitting there laughing. Goes, "You fools really think the moon is gonna crash in?" And I feel like that's kind of how it is with like coronavirus right now. It's like have people saying, "Oh my gosh, the world's gonna end," other people going, "Is it really that big deal? Is it being blown out of proportion?" So it depends sort of where the general narrative goes, where the media drives it within the next couple of months. If we start to see more cases go up, higher chances of E3 being canceled. If we start to see any sort of progress being made or containment, E3 less likely being canceled. It's just, that'll be very, very interesting if that one, to me, E3, that's such a big, important one, because people call it the Super Bowl. And I think if it is canceled, Sean Layden's going to be sitting over on the sidelines just laughing to himself, going, "This is why I told you guys that E3 sucked. This is why Sony doesn't do E3, because, look, we still had one without it." Because I do imagine that people will do some sort of, their own events. You'll have 1,000 Nintendo Directs, perhaps, in the place of in absence of E3. I really think you would. And I do wonder if, I don't know if you're familiar, but Sean Layden, formerly of Sony, would say that the reason he doesn't like E3 is because it used to be sort of a marketing, how do you put it, retail event. And he would say that when it happens in June or July, it's pretty much too late. Most retailers have already made their purchases in February, March or something. That's why they often do events around that time, like console reveals. And he says, so they've already made up their mind at that point. The fans that do care will probably get the information anyway. Do we really need to rent out a theater and do this big elaborate thing, with an orchestra and all that stuff? Which I do like that when they did E3, they were really good at it. So I think he's going to probably, if stuff happens in place of E3, and it's still fun and it's still hype, I think Sean Layden's going to feel very justified. He's like, "This is why you don't do E3. You could have just done it without it." So I'll be very interested to see kind of how that plays out. It's what a weird thing if like E3 just like ceased to exist. I don't know if we're going to quite go there yet, but I think E3, if anything, it might just, I don't think it'll go away completely, but it might change the face of it.
These are very uncertain times, I think, across the board. And, the loss of South by is certainly a loss for the city of Austin, the state of Texas, arguably. And I think I think all the cards are there for a ripple effect, unfortunately. I think, as somebody much more important than me once said, we'll see what happens, I guess. Again, a very fluid situation all around with the Sonic panel, with E3, with really everything at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if Coachella got canceled, but that's for another show, for another day, perhaps. All right, Noah, thanks for offering some insight on this sort of developing situation right now on the final.